Testing 1, 2, 3, test, test, test. Test, 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 test. On recording. There we go. Okay. So what I'd like to start with is just say, how do you explain enrichment to and what it means to either the public or to your staff if you have a new staff member working? How do you get that across to them, first of all?
I show them and I shape their learning skills. Our our enrichment room, you're sitting in the middle of a bunch of different animals. Right now, it's a bunch of different species of birds.
Mhm.
And we do have people come to us that have no experience with exotic animals, but they'll learn.
Mhm.
And so I always tell people it's an arousal of the senses that the animal, it's an arousal of the senses, and animals learn through enrichment. Enrichment helps provide the animal more choices in their environment, more control, and it empowers the animal through choice and control and complexities. We add in complexities because studies show that with predictability comes boredom. That is, and you all know that with the same old toy over and over and over, pretty soon you'll see just the animal abandon it, because it's already learned how to manipulate it. So we're constantly adding in more complexities to keep the animal engaging with that enrichment.
That is so important, and it's hard. The reason I ask that question is because I will often go to a client and I'll ask the question, so what do you give your dog for enrichment? And I either get ball play, which is ad nauseum, back and forth, right? Or a walk, which can be enrichment, but are you just walking to walk, or is there purpose to the walk, right? Or I get eyes glazing over and they say nothing because they don't know what I'm talking about, right? So explaining what it is really part of the job, and you know.
Well, and you know what, Diane, studies also show that if you're actually using positive reinforcement training, it's the animal's preferred form of enrichment. Well, that depends,
Yeah, oh, that's a thought. Yeah, it's something to think about. Yeah.
Sorry, snow's chiming in. What was I going to say? Oh, but we can't be training all the time. And once I get these animals that I'm focusing on, the exotics, empowered through foraging or interacting with different types of toys, my training comes in there as well, and we start building a relationship. But I can't always be training. Well, I am, but I can't be with that particular animal. So that's when, like, your foraging toys and different types of enrichment, like with aviaries. Aviaries are fabulous for birds because they can provide so much natural changing enrichment through the sun, the temperature, the sounds, the wind. But introducing a bird to an aviary is something like, people think, well, in the natural world, they're flying around all day, but you have a companion or an education bird. A large open space like that could be very stressful to them. Could be
Very much so. Yeah.
And you have to shape it.
Do you think, how does enrichment relieve stress? Since I'm focused on and my life's work is stress in animals and especially in dogs. How do you see it releasing stress in the animals that you work with?
I have never been asked that question.
Oh, good. Yay.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, how does it relieve stress? One thing you always hear me say is get your animal used to change, because so many times we know that stagnant environments can cause stress because it doesn't provide an outlet for the animal to either exhibit its natural behaviors, or if you're working with more intelligent, whatever you want to consider that, they have nothing to do mentally, so they'll start developing these abnormal repetitive behaviors. Providing enrichment provides consistent change to the animal through shaping. It empowers the animal to feel they have more sense of control over their environment, and can reinforce curiosity. When I see a curious animal, I always tell people, don't punish curiosity. Make sure that curiosity is directed towards desired behaviors. But a curious animal is one that the sky's the limit as long as you don't punish that.
Exactly, that you reward that curiosity. I'm working with a bite history dog this week, and I'm waiting for that curiosity. And once I see that the dog is curious, that's when I can really start to begin to reward that and start to, I still have to worry about being bitten, but in this case, I can manage how long I can work with the dog, the duration. And if they're curious, that means they're learning, period. So even if it's just remedial, very remedial learning. So, but enrichment can be stressful in and of itself, can't it? I mean, can you explore why and how you would work around that if you saw that the enrichment that you had provided to the animal was in fact not enriching? Because if it's not enriching to the animal, it's not enrichment, right?
Right. So that's why we're constantly observing and shaping. And do you understand the behaviors of this particular animal to understand that this animal is fearful of what you're trying to provide it, like the aviaries. I've seen lemurs go into new enclosures. I've seen different types of exotic animals, because think about it, with your exotics, they're likely caged. So they're approached by numerous different people, whether that's their keepers or whatever. One keeper may approach the enclosure totally different than another, may not understand what fear looks like, and provide enrichment that the animal's fearful of. Animals that come from histories of lack of enrichment or lack of appropriate enrichment could be very afraid of, like the red ruff lemur. I was working with him to desensitize the crate, and then I brought in this rock. It was about a little bit bigger than my hand, but I brought the rock in to prop my camera up against. Boom, that lemur was gone.
Oh, I bet.
So
you have a video, right, of your crate training of this particular lemur?
I do.
Yeah. Did you want to show that now, or?
Yeah.
And this was a progressive process. And what you just described was that process. You learned that the camera was not, or what you were propping up against the rock was not suitable for.
And I wasn't even thinking of it, Diane. You know what I mean? And this is what I think of. This is what I do. But I was just like, I'm going to bring in this rock and prop up my camera.
Yeah.
And just one introduction of that object that the lemur was not familiar with, I lost my my participant. He was way up there.
And then you might have had to backtrack a little bit to get their trust back, because you
definitely did.
The animal, we work with domestic animals, but the more I hear about you working with the exotics and the wild animals, I'm like, the more we don't ever need to use aversives, even with the biters, because if we work with them like a wild animal, we have more impact on their learning, and taking steps back and progressing, through the environment. So,
and you can put yourself in a very dangerous situation very fast. I learned that through working with Priscilla, the alligator. What I brought in new to her environment was me training her something new. And I was teaching her to let me touch the back of her head. And what I got with that was an arc of the tail, which is a clear sign of I'm getting ready to defend myself. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And I had to back way up with her like a week and a half in training.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, doing that one thing.
You go too far. If you go too fast or too far too fast, you go back several steps. If you go too slow, you don't progress. So it's a kind of a median balancing act between the two. Always try to read body language and know how to progress. Do you mind taking a question right now?
No, I don't mind.
There is a question from Monica. It goes, when you say you are shaping, are you saying you are an active participant in that process, or are you indicating that the environment shapes the behavior through progressively more complex designs? Could you also address what you see as the benefit of increasing complexity contrasted with instead novelty?
Yeah, great question. A little bit of both, Monica. I'm an active participant a lot of the times if I have a relationship with that animal. If I don't, I have nothing to offer. If I'm not an active participant, I'm observing from a distance. And like if an animal is nervous about going into a new enclosure or an outdoor enclosure, I will give that animal the opportunity to retreat to where it's comfortable. And then either if I can't interact with the animal at that time, then I'll just, I'm thinking of scenarios. I'm working with an Asian fishing cat right now that's very nervous. So he's in an indoor enclosure. If he's nervous of the outdoor enclosure, I could start taking his food dish and moving it to an area closer to the outdoor enclosure where he's not showing signs of being nervous of eating. And then, so I'm slowly shaping his comfort level with whether he's looking down and eating and looking up at the outdoor enclosure. So both. Most of the time, I'm an active participant because one of the first things I do is start training from a distance, whether it's even getting that animal used to the sound of my voice, or I always wear my keys on my pants so they jingle in a certain way so that animal knows that it's this individual coming up.
And then the other part of that was, what is the benefit of increasing complexity? And with it, I think she's looking at the novelty of, advancing the enrichment so that it's not always the same, but something new.
Well, in increasing complexity, so I'm shaping, and a lot of times, depending on the individual animal, I work with, unfortunately, exotics. There's a lot of times there's a history of lack of adequate enrichment. So I will start, I don't even want to say very basic. I'll start with what the animal knows. And then the animal tells me that the added complexity is a reinforcer from continuing to interact with it. And something new, adding a complexity to a piece of enrichment could be just, it has a ball with holes all over it. It could be the next adding complexity could be filling the inside of that ball with paper, crumpled paper or paper towels. So when the ball rolls, now the food doesn't come out as easily. So you'll see the animal starting to stick their fingers in, or pick, like I'm thinking of spider monkeys, picking it up and shaking it. As long as I see that animals stay engaged and not increase complexity in too big of steps that it actually positively punishes the very behavior we're trying to train, the animal will let me know. And then how I also know, Monica, is you keep doing this and adding complexity at the animal's pace, the animal's behavior is going to let you know, because they show behaviors such as related to anticipation to you walking up to the front instead of backing away. Does that help? You're very welcome.
Yeah, she did say, Monica said, thank you. So
you're very welcome.
Would you like to show the videos, the video of the lemur now? I'll be quiet so you can get that up on the screen and
Sure.
we can talk about that.
Do,
Because you had to go with the complexity of the crate in very minimal steps, step by step. And this was a very, an animal that really hadn't done any enrichment even to go into a crate. So that,
yeah, so it started with, you couldn't even pick up the crate, you know, outside of the lemur's enclosure. So it started with placing the crate at a distance and then bridging, walking up and reinforcing for calm behavior. And then I got it to the point where now the crate, instead of being the feared object, is the cue that the Honey Nut Cheerios are coming. So then once I got the crate into the enclosure, I then had to shape the behavior of me lifting the crate, because that's a new behavior. Then I had to set the crate on the table, and then it's one of those crates that you scrunch, you know what I'm saying, that has the spring in the lock on the door.
yeah.
So I even accidentally let go and it popped.
Oh,
Lost the
oh
lemur.
wow. Oh no. Yeah, that's scary. That would be scary. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you want to allow me to share my screen and I'll
Yeah,
show?
please. I did. I think I did allow all participant, all of us to share our.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me get this pulled up and share my screen. Okay. So I've got the 3 videos that I can show you here. Can you see that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So here's the red ruff. This is 1 minute and 13 seconds.
Okay.
And listen to what's happening in the background, because you'll see the red ruff react to this. Obviously, this is how far. Now what I'm doing is shaping the behavior of him turning around, but not coming out, turning around and staying in the crate. Then I had to shape, let me touch your tail and put it in. I think an animal in the enclosure next is about ready to make a noise. And just because the lemur reacted to that noise so fast or so dramatically, like you're getting ready to see, let me know that he may not be as comfortable as I think he is. He's doing what I want, but it doesn't mean he's comfortable.
Yeah.
So that was his choice to walk back in.
Yes, and he was comfortable with you.
Yeah. Oh, I guess I didn't show that. But I think I might have cut that video short, but it does show that. Oops, sorry. I'm not trying to play this. I'm trying to get back to the screen so I can see all of you guys. So does that make sense? But you can tell, like I think there was a macaw outside that was vocalizing and you saw him stop eating.
He did. I saw when there was something there.
Yeah, but if I didn't cut that video short, the ringtail lemurs are right next door and they bounced off the enclosure and he just bolted. And I was just like, what do you want to call that? Overreacting to a sound that he's usually familiar with. So when that
pairing the crate and that sound that he's familiar with was a pairing that was an added distraction. So it was distraction stacking, basically, if you want to talk, look at it that way. But that routine is something we should be doing with our dogs and our domestic animals, our cats and whatever. They'll just shove them into a crate. You get their consent and their choice, because you were talking about how it was his choice to go back in, which was building trust. And he definitely trusted you because he came out and was close to you and then went back in, right?
Yeah. And he did react by coming out. He didn't bolt or dart out, but he came out and then he stopped and I didn't cue him to go back in. He just turned around and went back in.
Right. And that has to do with increasing complexity, as Monica was asking. If you don't increase the complexity, it gets boring really quick. And animals need to progress just like we do. You can't read the same book over and over again. You need to have some advancement in that process. And I think animals are the same way. And so complexity has to increase, but step by step if you're adding a novel item.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a new item, you might have to go backwards a couple of steps. And
Well, and it's just like I play games on my phone to get myself to fall asleep at night. And there's always added, okay, you passed this level. Now you're going to this level.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you keep on level 1 all the time, even though the game is changing, it's too easy, you're going to bypass it and go to the next one because you get that adrenaline rush, sense of accomplishment.
But you have a photo of is it your toucan going for the mealworm?
Oh, the black cast cornbill.
Oh yes, and that's pretty complex because he has to break through the barrier and then he has to try to figure out how to get that mealworm out of there, and it really occupies his attention for quite some time. So if we could show that one. Sure.
So let me tell you a little bit about black cast cornbills because they're a little bit different than parrots. Parrots have a very destructive beak. The hornbills, they have a very long beak, and in the wild, they'll use that beak for pounding through trees to get to bugs. They'll use it to kill rodents or whatever they're getting ready to eat. So you have to understand, and this is my first black cast hornbill that I've ever worked with. So I just sat and observed her and watched how does she like to destroy things. So I suggested that we start with their food containers, but I said, make them clear so she can see the food item, which is mealworms and superworms. And then I said, fill it with crinkle paper. And then when we're introducing a new substrate like the crinkle paper to an animal, I always watch and make sure they're not ingesting it. So that's what you're getting ready to see. And watch at the bottom of the container, she can see a mealworm moving around, and you can tell because she's pecking at it, but she can't figure out how to get it. So that's where
it's more complex. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me share my screen again. And let's see, how do I get this off here? Where did she go?
You have a back button.
Yeah, but let's see. I'm not really familiar with YouTube. I just upload my videos there. Okay.
There you go.
Here she is. So that mealworm is right at the bottom of that one. See, she's like, I can see it. So there's the crinkle paper, and I watched. She threw it down to the ground. And see how the natural behavior of pounding things.
Yeah.
And what's really neat is I have cameras on all the rooms in my center. So last night, she's with her mate, Fred, who's not on camera, and he tends to not interact in front of people. But I sat there and watched him on the camera after everybody left, destroying this toy. So complexities also shape duration of the time. You can see the superworms there at the bottom. Also shape the time. And like when I'm working enrichment, especially foraging, I focus a lot on foraging, getting the animal working for its food. Because the positive reinforcement training creates a relationship, because you're always pairing yourself with the positive, you begin understanding that animal really well.
Mhm.
So then a lot of animals can quickly overly bond with you. I don't want that to happen. So, and it can cause stress when you end the training session or leave. So I'll redirect attention and throw in their favorite foraging toys. So you'll see the animals turn away from me, walk away from me. And that way I can just walk away, and I'm shaping duration through the time they're foraging.
Mhm.
They look up 20 minutes later and hopefully they forgot I was even there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so we are coming up on 4:30, but do you mind going an extra half hour? Because this is so fascinating, and hopefully everybody can stay for, the duration. Because I'd like to talk about how do you choose the appropriate enrichment, and we're dealing with senses there and sensory perception, right?
Yeah. So it depends, I focus on, like with Snow, my deaf and blind dog, I have to
Yes.
focus on touch. So hers is a lot.
Tactile, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I focus on the tactile. I focus a lot on visual, audible,
Mhm.
depending on the species I'm working with, the olfactory, like the vultures.
Mhm.
Parrots can't smell very well, so I don't focus on that one with them. But a lot of the different mammals I work with smell extremely well.
Mhm.
And what was your question, Diane? I'm sorry.
So how do you choose the enrichment? Based on senses, of course, and all of the five senses have to be in play if it's going to be called enrichment, right? Period.
Yeah, I don't even pay attention necessarily to the species,
Mhm.
because one ringtail lemur can act completely different than the next ringtail lemur.
Correct. Yeah.
So I focus on what the animal does do. And I also focus on, like, I'll watch for abnormal repetitive behaviors and try to identify what the antecedent to it is. Like I saw
Mhm.
one today and it was a
Mhm.
primate. And I know a big red flag for me is abnormal repetitive behaviors with primates, parrots. You're more intelligent species, whatever an animal is intelligent as they have to be,
Yeah.
but what
That's
I
a really
saw,
good, that's a good phrase you just said. They're
yeah,
as intelligent as they have to be. And we don't let them think.
yeah, like
That's what I see.
I'm not gonna get a raptor, a
Mhm.
bird of prey, to take its foot and get in there. Well, I could if I stuck a live mouse in there.
Right.
It's gonna hunt, but like your raptors, you think of how they've evolved through nature. They do a lot of perching, and they're fabulous hunters.
Mhm.
And so they've got fabulous eyesight. Your owls, they can hear so well, and they don't even need to see their prey to be able to hunt it. All they
Yes.
need to be able to do is hear it, and they
Mhm.
will get it. So I'm trying to remember.
So, well, you were talking about how the individual, each animal is an individual,
Oh,
no matter whether they're a lemur or whatever, they're different personalities. So I would imagine that you would target the enrichment to the personality of that particular
yeah, to
animal.
the personality, and what can they do?
Mhm.
Like I said, because I'm constantly working with animals that are in enclosures, a
Mhm.
lot of their choices are limited, more
Yeah.
limited than a dog's. They can't just run outside and run around and play in the backyard. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, so you'll see a lot of these abnormal repetitive behaviors. Like today, I was looking at a new primate, and I walked in, and this is the second time I've seen this one do it. And he's not as comfortable with people up close,
Mhm.
and he runs and bounces through his cage, and then he licks his fingers and his toes. And I've seen him doing this twice, and I was like, I don't know this lemur.
Mhm.
Well, that's what it is. It's a ringtail
Mhm.
lemur. I've only met it once before. But that is the second time I've seen him lick his toes and his feet. Why is he doing it? Is it a sense of smell? Or is the cage designed where he's bouncing off of things that are poking into his feet and his hands, and he's licking them to help alleviate the pain?
Mhm.
I'm still not sure what's going on, but I'm going to start watching him closer and I'll figure it out.
So you think it's stress related and abnormal repetitive behavior?
It could be. I don't know
Tell,
anything
yeah.
about this lemur's
Yeah.
background, but you know, all the other lemurs I work with, I don't see them doing this. I
Yeah.
see him doing it.
Him doing it. And so your enrichment will be to target having him not focus on his feet then, right?
Or seeing him,
Use enrichment for him.
yeah, seeing if he can come down closer, because right now he's jumping on top of what's called like a jump box
Mhm.
to get as far away from us as possible. And that's when he does it.
Mhm.
So it's hard for me to see what he's doing up there. So if we can get him to come down to a platform at a distance,
Mhm.
and I'll start adding in, I need to know from the keepers, what are his favorite foods? So now we can pull them and work with just like 2 in the beginning, in case he's so stressed he won't eat. I don't want to take those 2 pieces of food away from him. So I'm going to observe him. I'm going to train him. A lot of lemurs are not really good with their hands. They can stick their hands in, but they don't seem to be as good with grasping items and twisting off lids, stuff like that. So through providing enrichment, if it's something I provide him, like I'm thinking of these acrylic balls that we provide to a lot of mammals that twist open, and they have these holes all over, and you can increase complexity, but lemurs can easily get their fingers in. So I'll start by asking the keeper, what is this animal's favorite food? And then I'll start adding it to that acrylic ball. And just because a particular animal likes peanuts does not mean it's going to like peanut butter. Because a primate likes bananas does not mean it's going to like banana baby food. Because how that substance changes, I've seen so many animals will eat peanuts but won't touch peanut butter. So then if I can get, his name's Charlie, to come down to this platform and make it so easy for him to take his favorite foods out, then I'm going to watch him, like during it, if he does any kind of tapping of his hands and licking his hands, the more he uses his fingers. Because I don't know how old this lemur is. We may be looking at arthritis.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there may be a medical condition happening.
Yeah, can't rule that out. Definitely not. So
And
it's
I've
really
noticed this particular lemur does some self-stimulation a lot.
yeah.
Trying to figure out how to do that. And I'm like, what, he's doing that excessively. Why is he doing
It
that?
really needs enrichment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that kind of is a good transition into what you will see abnormal repetitive behaviors in dogs as well. So repetitive barking or licking or stimulation. Lots of different things that you would prefer them not do. And so what does enrichment, what's good about it? What are the benefits? And it reduces stress-related repetitive behavior, basically. It has an anti-anxiety and a therapeutic effect, and it helps prevent unwanted behaviors that we don't really necessarily need to see or want to see. And it's also needed for them to thrive, not just survive.
Got it.
Do you have any other benefits that you can think of over the years that you've seen happen to exotic animals that, would be similar to domestic animals?
I was just thinking about something. Did I say that enrichment is part of every single one of our behavior modification programs?
No, but I assume that.
Okay.
Should be, and it should be a part of every behavior change program with dogs as well. And it is with mine. Otherwise, Otherwise you go backwards sometimes and you hit a wall.
Well, a lot of times, you're more intelligent animals, and I keep saying air quote because how do you define intelligence?
Exactly.
The way I look at it is an animal that when it interacts with an object, it learns through one consequence how to manipulate that object in a different way to get the outcome it wants. And I always say the more intelligent the animal, the harder it is to keep. That's why I like working with the primates and the parrots. But they're constantly keeping you on your toes, because if you are not ahead of the game, you see behavior issues starting to form. But if I do not keep that animal mentally engaged, a lot of times I see over grooming starting to happen, over self-stimulation, which is very common with primates. They don't have anything else to do, so they're going to do what they do with the things they have.
Exactly.
And then you see it develop into an abnormal repetitive behavior, and even new ones. If you try to stop that abnormal repetitive behavior from happening with blocking it, you're just going to see it shift. And it's going to, in a lot of times, it will make it more intense.
Yeah.
Because it did that abnormal repetitive behavior for such a long period of time to relieve stress in its life. Now you just stopped it. So that is stressful.
Yeah,
you've just interfered with it versus redirecting it.
Right. And so they'll become sneaky about it.
Yeah. And a lot of times you'll see like that self-stimulation will turn into a self-injurious behavior. They'll injure themselves.
Yeah.
And that injury gets worse. And then as that injury gets worse, you've now taken a behavior issue and turned it into a medical issue.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes these medical issues, Diane, once they get so far gone, it's hard to get them back.
Yeah, if they're too far gone, because then you're talking chronic stress at that point, and they leveled out and they just can't come down from the stress that they're feeling. There's different types of enrichment, and cognitive enrichment is one of the types, right? Social enrichment, environmental enrichment. I think in zoos, I have a diagram that shows that the physical environment is, it's like half of what you want to make sure that there is something in that physical environment that is working the animal's mind and body. I have a little video about some cognitive with the dog, and I just want to share it real quick, and you can tell me if you see anything in this behavior.
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot now, huh?
I'm going to put you on the spot. This is a English bulldog who everybody thinks English bulldogs are not intelligent, but again, you have to rate. So I'm going to find that. Here we go. The basket challenge. I find that people love this basket challenge. It's the English bulldog. That's not what I wanted. Well, this is a different dog doing a basket challenge. I suppose I could show you that one. Hold the phone thing there. I have these on my desktop.
Is this one where you do see a behavior concern, Diane?
The basket challenge that's what I look for, is concerns and behavior. Let's take a look at this dog. This is not Max, but this is the basket challenge, basically. As we can see here. This is cognitive. It's problem solving. I'm problem solving with dogs. We don't let them solve problems, and see how he's studying the problem like a chessboard.
Yeah.
And this is a connective exercise with the treat on a cloth, and you have to pull the cloth out to get the treat. So he's studying it. And that's what I like to see with the dog. I like to see that they walk around, they study it, they look at it, but see then what he's doing? He's trying to find the easy way out, right? Or a different way, or a different way of doing it. And then he stands there, and what is he doing? He's thinking. Let your dog think, right? And then he gets frustrated with the whole thing. They give him a minute. Oh, and then he jumps back because his frustration is now giving him an adrenaline rush, and he's gonna be worried about, he'll be worried about that board now, and he might not solve the problem. So at this point, I would probably take it away, but look at what he does. See, yeah.
So we got it.
Yeah. So what did I learn from that? You tell me. What I learned from that was that we have a dog, and he's a bite history, and he gets frustrated really easy. And he has to let that frustration out, and then things in the environment can distract him. And so then distraction stacking is absolutely not what you want to do with this dog. You want to go one distraction at a time. And so I learn a lot about the personality of each dog by doing this particular exercise, because they really have to think. It wasn't that he wasn't thinking, it's that he couldn't think in that moment that he got frustrated, and then everything around him collapsed. And that's when we're going to get a bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
go ahead.
I've got something really similar. That's one of the next videos coming up that shows it with a parrot.
Okay.
You want me to show it?
Love it. Yes, please.
This is Rocky, our Moluccan cockatoo. This is the one. See, I even labeled it foraging toy failure. So Rocky has a history of bite, and on the bottom, he can see his goldfish crackers in the bottom of these bottles, both of them. And there's a hole drilled, but the hole is just a little bit bigger than the goldfish cracker, and he can see it, but he can't get to it, and he doesn't figure it out.
Yeah, and then he gets frustrated. Yeah, and
you'll see him walk away. And if you don't know Rocky's behavior, when he does that quick thing, you'll see it. He's going to do it. I don't want to be standing next to him, at least not at that point. Now I could, and I know he wouldn't bite me due to some training, and he understands that I understand frustration, and okay, let's try it a different way. But see, look at the thing that broke my heart is I was the one recording this. And it was really tough for me to record this because I wanted to go in and help him out and show it. But I'm looking at, see, he walks away, and then you'll see him drop, boom. That means I'm going to bite. So
because energy, he had to get rid of that energy that he felt from the frustration. So that's when the bite will occur. Right?
Yeah.
He just had to get rid of it somehow because he couldn't get what he wanted. And we don't want the animals to get to that point. As we saw with the other dog as well. At least you have to maybe learn something about the animal before you can provide the exact environment and learning situation in behavior modification that they really need. And sometimes we don't see that. We just jump into the behavior modification, and we don't learn anything about the dog except what we want them to do step by step, right? I learn about the animal and listen to the animal's voice, basically. So dog's voice.
So, yeah. And a lot of times we say, like I say, one of the common mistakes people make in training is taking too big of steps.
Yes.
And we do the same thing with shaping and enrichment. I have my last video of the ringtail lemurs
Yes.
using a spinning foraging wheel. And I told
yeah.
you they can't use their fingers very well. So you'll see my hand come in and I kind of shape like, turn it like that. There you go. I let them get one. You want me to show it real quick?
Yes, because you're shaping there. And then we'll talk about some ideas for enrichment.
Right here it is. Shaping complexity. So those holes are so small, and you can see how they're using your hands, that they're not really good with the dexterity of the fingers. So I'm showing them turn it here now, and I stopped it so she could get it.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they do need a little bit of help, and then they retain that learning.
Because these two are quick to just abandon something if they can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so not letting him get to that point of frustration, but just giving him a little bit of help, and then they know, and then they don't have to get frustrated. But you have to know when you can do that. And sometimes you have to learn through making those mistakes or what, observing and analyzing what's happening. Yeah. So let's talk about some enrichment ideas that people can take back with them. I have a few in food items hanging for exotics, right? Like hanging, talk about that. Hanging from a tree. We saw some hanging with Rocky working on that foraging toy. I think we have another question coming in too, but I'll take that when we're done here. But go ahead.
I love hanging enrichment.
Hanging, yeah.
I love it because, go ahead.
No, but in your parrot talk, you talked about how you put a perch next to the hanging item, and then later you took the perch away. So that was like a real progressive, was a moment for me that it's a progressive movement into the enrichment as well.
Yeah, because so many people, especially with birds, they're trying to add levels of complexity, and then they hang the toy right here. You know what I mean? With a beak that can destroy it pretty easy. So I say, now start slowly moving that toy further and further away from the perch. So now the bird, it can see the toy, and you'll see it just like your dog. Figure out like, how's it hanging? And then you'll see the bird go up and hang from the top of the cage or the side of the cage to get to that toy. And if it doesn't cause, if the bird can obtain the food from the inside, I tell people, hang the toy outside the cage. So now there's extra objects that it's got to get through, but I'm watching as long as that bird can obtain it. And I use that especially with screamers when I'm trying to modify a scream and building duration of the amount. I used to say a bird can't scream if it's foraging for its food, but I've had screamers in that they're screaming at the same time they're and I'm like, we got a long way to go with this one.
Yeah, it's never or always, right? So yeah, so in dogs we could hang things from trees as well. We could have balls that hang, but be careful for safety. Flirt poles, which we're playing with them, or we can hang things from the X pen for puppies or dogs that are in an X pen. So there's ways to hang enrichment from different things, or on a fence too, to eliminate fence chasing and different things like that. So
one of the things I love about hanging enrichment, like we were just talking about it today, I was like, you need to hang enrichment from the ceiling for these spider monkeys. Now, spider monkeys can stand almost as tall as me with their arms. So, and they can jump. They can figure this out. I mean, maybe start with it low so they can sit on the ground and interact with it. And then next day, raise it a foot. And the thing I like I used to do this with my pig, I would hang a baffle cage in the center of this enclosure. Now, pigs can't lift their head very high, but what I love about hanging enrichment is other mammals, other than primates, they don't usually either all 4 feet are on the floor. So they have to manipulate that hanging toy with their head. And what happens if it's hanging is it's rolling around the side of their head, and then it
Yeah.
rolls this way, just causing added complexity.
Right, exactly. I had 2 spider monkeys, so
Oh, did you?
yes, I did. Yeah, they're quite different.
You never cease to amaze me.
No, I'll have to tell you about it some other time, but I think since we're running up on 5, I still want to talk about some ideas, but Monica said, Monica said, I'm glad you mentioned the individual skills and current repertoire of behaviors. I design multisensory environments for dogs. And while there are some commonalities across the canine species, the individual really dictates the fine tuning of the design, and that absolutely relies on observation. You mentioned giving the animal choice as well, and she's loved that. And she's found that if given a choice to leave when they indicate, they are more inclined to return on their own. And yes, and that's why. And what do people do? They don't allow their dog to think or to walk away to think about it. They have to cue, find it, or point to it, or get higher in their tone, right? Just let the dog think.
Yeah,
They'll return to it, as you saw.
right.
That's why we weren't interrupting what he was doing, was because I kind of knew that he had to think about it, even though his frustration level was accelerating in the dog, a video that I showed.
Yeah.
Good
I
point,
love
Monica.
that.
Good
That
point.
video you showed of the dog, that may be common to you and the people in your classes. It's
Mhm.
not coming to me. I'm watching
Mhm.
that and it's like, ooh, I got some good ideas.
Oh, I got lots of those. I got hundreds of videos of those. So, yeah. And some more ideas. If you have farm animals, like rolling hay bales are really good for farm animals, or any enrichment that they can roll something, horses and those big balls, and anything that keeps their mind active and also physically fit. Foraging, which borders on nose work, right? And hiding things outside or inside. We do egg hunts. The dogs find eggs all around, and there's like 50 or 60 of them, and they're so busy finding them, they don't care who's going by. They don't care about anything except what they're foraging for. And so you can't be relaxed and reactive at the same time. And enrichment relaxes animals as well, I think, makes them tired, mentally tired.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So do you have any ideas to add to those pieces? You have you're working with alligators, which fascinates me.
Oh, they're one of my favorite species of animals to work with. And you know why? Because I told you I was training Priscilla. So I was training her recall, target. She got an injury to her arm where she almost got put down because of it. And I was just like, please let me work on physical therapy with her this summer. And if you look at her now, she stands up and she walks just like, but it took me months to get her to that point.
Wow.
But the reason why I like working with alligators is because I'm still trying to understand what I'm seeing. And like alligators, you can't see the muscles in their face changing.
Right.
They don't necessarily blink unless you touch their eyelids. You know what I mean?
Not really. Go ahead.
Staying still to them, what I see, it depends. Staying still could be her just observing me, which she does. And staying still can also be she's nervous. There's no fur or feathers that can move around her back that those little indicators that let me know. I can't see her ears go back if she's not comfortable. The only thing you'll see, probably not the only thing, is I watch that tail start to arc. It's one of the only things. So I need to be absolutely sure, because Elvis and Priscilla have grown a lot this summer. These gators are big, and I am standing 1 foot in front of them, 6 inches in front of them, and I'm training them. Now, if I'm not sure, so when Priscilla did that with me, I backed up, I stopped, and I did repetitions with things that she knew very well.
Mhm.
And if I wasn't sure what I was seeing, I would step to her side and then redirect her attention a foot away from me to be able to better read her behavior.
You really have to have some good observation and analysis skills, like Monica was mentioning as well. That observation is so important, and I think that's what's missing from pet parents, just pet parents or companion dog parents or people who have exotics in their home. Do they really read their body language like we are trained to do and analyze? And so we look at things a little bit differently. But we're running up onto 5, and I don't want to keep people any longer. There's so much to talk about. We could write a whole book on this, and we could do like 10 seminars on this based on the knowledge. And so let's leave it open, and then maybe come back to it. I will try to write down some enrichment ideas in the group and have those ready for everybody to take a look at. But I want to say thank you, Lara. Oh my gosh, I just enjoy your presence so much, and all of the information that you have, and that people really need to take heed and listen to the voice of not just dogs, but all animals.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Diane. Thank you. It was an honor.
Great pleasure. So, all right. Thank you for coming, everybody. Appreciate you being here, and hope you took something away from it. And I'm sure that Lara will answer questions if you email her, and I certainly will as well.
Okay. Sounds
Goodbye,
good.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, Diane.
Bye-bye.